Good morning, everybody. I'm substituting for your usual host, Daniel Wolf, who couldn't be here today, but he asked me to be here. I've actually never been to a Creative Mornings event before. I am a bee. I was born 30 days ago, and in 10 days I will die. So yeah, live it up. Flow is a great theme. I had like a bee-themed thing where I was going to pretend to be a bee, but I'm something about nectar flow. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about what everyone's been saying to me since I woke up at 6, which is go with the flow. Ha ha ha, go with the flow. As some of you might know, sad news here. Astu couldn't join us this morning due to a family emergency. So she's in South Bay taking care of very important matters. So very sorry, and keep her in your thoughts today, her and her family and her loved ones. That said, we have all of you here. We have this space, we have this food and coffee. So what are we going to do? Sent out a bunch of text messages this morning, trying to find anyone, someone. At one point we were thinking, oh, we'll just make all of the costume people do a impromptu talk. I'll just put random photos up there. That was a very serious thought. But one of our volunteers connected us with a community member who I'm very excited to introduce and bring up on stage. Not us two, but Heather Bourbeau. Heather Bourbeau is a longtime poet. She's been writing and published since she was 8 years old and is joining us here today. She's written many books, including one with Don Cheadle. Is that correct? That's correct. That's not in the rumor mill. She's fantastic. She works with the UN and uses poetry to talk about such issues like climate, conflict, and migration, all things that are very top of mind and need a lot of investigation and processing. So please welcome to the stage our speaker this month, Heather Bourbeau.
Yeah, I was called upon right as I was leaving to come here, so pardon the hair and the outfit. I would have done it all differently. Thanks. Grasslands of the Arctic. The Arctic has grasslands, and last night I woke from thunder, afraid it was bombing, my pulse aware, my mind asleep. In the thick heat of the Costanoan Canyon, a woman makes ablutions of sage smoke, soft circles to face, arms, heart, belly. Under the shade of a coast oak, I strain to catch the scent of sun-warmed bay, to watch the young moss blossom. But the flamingos have run from tsunamis. The coyotes are coming down from the canyon. The deer are walking 4 lanes without fear. Somewhere, asphalt buckles under roots, and I have become a meerkat, vigilant, on edge, desperate to protest this progression, to stave the damage, to right the wrongs. Too late, too late. The eclipse is coming, a welcome respite as we turn together toward the heavens, give pause and awe and search for grace. The Arctic has grasslands, and last night I woke from the thunder, waited for rain, and recalled summer storms that once gave relief. Picking Green Almonds in Syria, 2008. It's from a video on YouTube, which is heartbreaking. I grew under the shadow of almonds, slept in fog and marsh, dreamt of water and fire, the calls of crickets, the echoes of mountains. I drove along levees, smelled the rice harvest burns, sang of birds unnamed. I grew under the shadow of almonds, swam in the promise of pink blossom rain, roamed in the luxury of misspent springs. Now the pull of you, the call of olive groves 7,000 miles away, the pain of pleasure almost found. I watch a film of 4 women young, their private harvest of orchard green, hair tied and loose, laughter cascading between bites and waves, the savor of Loz Akhtar, the wonder of friends still gathered, the delicious ignorance of what will come. And I'll just do two more. Smoke. I do not see the need to burn the houses of those slaughtered. Everything has already been taken, I say over strong tea and thick porridge. My colleague says I will not make a good bandit, that I do not understand the effectiveness of hideous acts to achieve future obedience, and I wish that that were true. In this dust and smoke-filled Harmattan night, with a moon blood orange and near full, my breath is shallow. I cannot avoid the shisha of expats greedily sucking sickly tobacco, some false sophistication of those closer to death by lungs marked and rotting, like my grandfather's at the sallow, emaciated end, despite decades free from the habit. Before me, one man swims laps methodically, up and down the middle of the pool, hardly a ripple, his broad back barely rising to allow his mouth to draw in air. His arms deep beneath him to glide scarcely seen. The thick water calls me to dive, to crawl, to sink into oxygen free of carbon, to savor moments free of fumes and dust and pain. I'm working on a new series that's a memoir of place about the West, and the West that I grew up with, and looking at parts of its history or its current reality that people don't probably know. But because it's flow, and I'm going to go with the flow, I'm going to read you one that has a bit more of rhythm. So, diving beetle heart. If I slow down, if I sit or pause or breathe long enough, I will feel the weight of air on skin, the pain of your body's echo, the hunger to remember to slow. Remember cool desert dawn through pyramids built by the dying, the sweet non-taste of snowflakes before your breath mixed with mine, the invisible pattern your lips left on my back, my nape, my haunch. If I slow my diving beetle heart, slow, hardened longing, turning, slow the turn toward you, I may forget I felt something. I may lose the urge to learn you again and be left with the slow. So that's some of my poetry. Thank you. And you can probably hear that a lot of it is informed by the work that I do. Bless you. I work on issues of conflict, migration, and climate change, and usually how they're all connected. And I work with primarily UN agencies doing reports and some direct assistance. And as you can imagine, I'm witnessing or hearing witness to a lot of pretty heavy topics, and I try to channel that also through my personal experience and bringing it back to my daily reality here. And I am always grateful for the Bay Area, which keeps me sane and grounded, although, things are changing here too. But so in terms of the writing process and my personal flow, I will often do sort of a vomit, I say. It's like I just need to get sort of the basic gist of it out. And then, especially if there's been a piece that has required a lot of research, or I feel like it's required a lot of research, or it's something that's incredibly personal, because both of those can feel a little overwhelming sometimes, and you just stare at the the totality of it or the vulnerability of it, and it can feel overwhelming. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes, and it's just going to like, or I'll call my friend, former poet laureate of El Cerrito, Mashane Nguyen, and she and I will set timers for each other, and then call each other back and work through some poems. But once I sort of do that first ugly writing of it, I'll see where the rhythm is naturally happening. What word choices have I already made? Is there something that is the kernel of it that's going to set that tone? For instance, with Diving Beetle Heart, once I thought, oh, I want to have it set in sort of a warm, then the slow came into my head, and then just like that liquidy slowness I wanted to pull out. That is not how that first draft went, though, at all. And same with times when I choose to have repetition, and I'm trying to see if I built any of that repetition. So the Arctic has grasslands. So I was listening to, we'll say BBC report, but I truly don't, some non-American report about the melting of the Arctic, and that now they've discovered all these grasslands. And they were talking about different animals' reactions to it. And then I heard somebody separately, like weeks later, talk about how flamingos run from tsunamis. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's amazing. Like, what an amazing image. And then around that same time, you know, we had these horrible thunderstorms like 2 years ago that ended up leading to fires, unfortunately, thunder and lightning storms here. And so it all sort of came together, but that first thing of the Arctic has grasslands, I just felt like, oh, that is shocking enough to need to be repeated. And so but again, that first draft is super ugly, and I probably shredded it because nobody should ever see the first draft of that. Yeah, and then sometimes if it's part of a collection, I try and see how the rhythm flows between poems, or if I'm, you know, maybe not getting called at 7:58 to give a thing. I truly would have given even more thought to the flow of these poems, and to see how they all tie together, and if they're going with something that I try and have a good mix, because poetry, it's hard, I get it. It's especially hard at 8:30 in the morning when hopefully you've had caffeine by now, hopefully. But I get that it's hard to hold people's attention, and you want to also have them savor those words, because in poetry it's really stripped down, and each word holds some importance. And so you want people to be able to not, let's be honest, space out. So really understanding the rhythm of your own set as well is important. Being able to say it out loud a few times and feel it. And I try and tell people all the time that when they're doing their own writing, if you say it out loud, you're going to hear from another person's perspective, or call a good friend and read to them, and that's going to make your writing 100 times better. Like, you're going to catch things that you wouldn't catch if and you look at it and you think it's so pretty, and then you hear it out loud and you're like, oh, it could be better. Usually it can be better. And that's where I think musicians have sort of a leg up sometimes in terms of process, because they're just naturally thinking about how it's going to sound to an audience. I mean, I would love to tag team with a songwriter and hear if they think that that's true or not, that the process goes more quickly than it does for poetry. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys, and if you have any questions, I am here.